Well, there may soon be signs of life at Koeberg's Unit 1 reactor, which has been under maintenance since December. Eskom has now been given permission to run the reactor following the completion of work there. For more on the impact this could have on the grid, let's bring in University of Pretoria energy expert, Professor David Walwyn. A very good evening to you, sir. Good to have your time. So, is this a big step forward in dealing with South Africa's energy shortage?
It's a significant moment. It's a significant and long-awaited moment for Eskom, but it's not a huge step forward for the whole energy system. So just to give you the numbers, Unit 1 has an output of about 1 gigawatt, and we need altogether about 30 gigawatts in the system. For every gigawatt that we are missing, that's one stage of load shedding. So when we get Unit 1 back, that will be one stage of load shedding less. So at the moment we're at 2 to 3, we would be at 1 to 2 if Unit 1 was fully operational.
And just on what you're saying, News 24, which has spoken to Eskom on the back of the confirmation that work with the reactor can now proceed, says Eskom gave this comment where they say they've got permission from the National Nuclear Regulator but are resolving some emergent issues on the secondary side of the plant, which I suppose speaks to what you're saying, Professor, that there is still a bit of a long road ahead, if you will.
There's definitely a long road ahead. That announcement by Eskom is actually only a 10-day delay, which is quite small relative to the 10 months that we've been waiting for this unit to come back online. Just to, to recap on what's been happening, Unit 1 came offline in December last year, so December 2022, it came off, and it was supposed to come back into commission June this year, so June 2023, and we are already towards the end of November. So by the end of November, this Unit 1 will be back, but that doesn't mean that we will now have an extra gigawatt in the system, because now Unit 2 has to come off, and that's another gigawatt lost. So effectively what will be happening at the end of November is the capacity that we've been relying on from Koeberg from Unit 2 will now be replaced by Unit 1, and Unit 2 will go offline. It's a very, very critical moment actually for the whole energy system, because Koeberg was built it was commissioned in 1984, and at the time it was granted a 40-year license. And so that license expires in June 2024. And Eskom cannot renew that license unless it does these refurbishments. And so the refurbishment of Unit 1 and of Unit 2 have been absolutely critical to any chance that Eskom will be granted the renewal of its 40-year license for another 40-year period.
And what are the tests that can now go ahead at Unit 1 before it can become commercially operable?
Well, first of all, they have to test whether these refurbishments have worked, so whether there's integrity. The refurbishments included a refueling, but also the refurbishment of all of the the cooling circuits, and there are 3 key cooling circuits. So these all have to run at pressure, and they have to be checked for leaks, and they have to be checked for integrity of all of the safety systems. But there's also another very important check that needs to be made at Koeberg, and that's the check of the integrity of the concrete shell that encases the building, which is there in order to protect us from the worst of a nuclear accident. God forbid that there would be a nuclear accident, but that concrete shell around Koeberg is a first-line defense from anything that might happen. And there are reports that casing has cracks in it and may need to be significantly reconstructed. I don't know how reliable those reports are, but that's another thing. So that the next step is obviously for Eskom to get renewal of its 40-year license, and it has now put one peg in the sand, if you like, by getting this refurbishment completed of Unit 1. And so theoretically it could now apply to the National Nuclear Regulator for the extension of Unit 1's operating license. This is an increasingly complicated story, but Eskom is hoping to be able to separate the license for Unit 1 from Unit 2, do the refurbishment of Unit 2, complete that possibly in the same period, which is about 9 months, and then apply for the renewal of the Unit 2 license. So I hope you followed all of that because it's complicated.
At this point, Prof, we're not only trying, I suppose many of us have in fact to some degree given up on trying to understand the technicalities. We just want to have the lights on 24/7. But to get there, as you were saying, we do have these tests that have to be conducted on Unit 1. Unit 2 also facing its own set of processes that need to unfold in the coming weeks and months. But as far as nuclear in South Africa, there were a few awkward conversations, as we know, in the last decade about how much nuclear should be factored into our energy mix, if at all. Do you see a future for nuclear in South Africa?
You're speaking to the wrong person. I'm not a proponent of nuclear. I think that the future lies much more in storage with renewable energy, so wind and solar plus storage. And I've just been listening actually to a talk by Ricardo Hoffman, who's written this report on the review of the South African economy. And there's a lot in that report that's extremely interesting. But he's also a proponent of South Africa becoming a major economy globally in respect of the green economy and being able to utilize renewable energy with storage for the processing of minerals and various other manufacturing operations. So I think that the nuclear option is very expensive. I'm not sure that we at this point have the necessary technological capability to be able to continue with the nuclear expansion program. Of course, there are others who would differ with me on that subject. So I think that, if you were to ask me my honest opinion about the way forward is renewable plus storage, and we have lots of the necessary technology and infrastructure and mineral resources to be able to pursue storage as a viable option within the energy system. And I think that's a preferable route. Rather than pay R1 trillion for a new nuclear power station, which we may or may not be able to run effectively, we should go for the lower cost option with the alternative being able to bring in storage when the technology becomes fully commercialized.
Professor David Walwyn from the University of Pretoria, good to speak to you. Thank you.